Most people think nuclear survival is about distance from a blast. Wrong. It's about wind direction, water systems, and whether your city has basements. Today, we're ranking American cities, not to scare you, but to show you how targeting logic, fallout patterns, and infrastructure actually work. Some of these rankings will surprise you. Let's get into it, but before we start, I need to explain how we've made our list. We're scoring cities using 4 buckets. Bucket A, target risk. Does your city have military bases nearby, major ports, defense contractors, financial centers, nuclear command assets? The more of these, the higher the risk. This isn't about fear, it's about understanding targeting logic used by strategic planners. Bucket B, fallout and downwind risk. Even if you're not the target, you can still get hit by fallout from upwind targets. Prevailing winds in the US generally blow west to east. If you're downwind from multiple high-value targets, you're in trouble even if your city isn't directly struck. Bucket C, first 72 hours survivability. Can you shelter? Does your city have basements, subway systems, hospitals, water access, and evacuation routes that aren't total gridlock? The first 3 days determine who survives the immediate aftermath. Bucket D, weeks to months resilience. After the dust settles, can your city actually function? Is there local food production nearby? Energy resilience? Can you survive without air conditioning or heat? Is the population density so high that resource shortages turn deadly? We're starting with the 5 worst city types, then flipping to the 5 best. Each one gets scored on these 4 buckets. And yeah, some of these are going to surprise you. The 5 worst cities. Worst number 5. Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix ranks here not because it's a major target, but because it cannot survive medium term without external support. Let me explain why. Target risk, moderate. Luke Air Force Base is nearby. There's some defense industry presence, but Phoenix isn't a top-tier strategic target compared to coastal metros or major command centers. Fallout risk, low to moderate. Phoenix is somewhat isolated geographically. Prevailing winds could bring fallout from targets in Southern California or Nevada test sites if things go very wrong, but it's not the primary concern here. First 72 hours, weak. Phoenix has sprawling suburban development with almost no basements due to soil and water table conditions. That means limited natural shelter. Hospital capacity is decent, but evacuation is a nightmare. Only a few highways out, all of which turn into parking lots during emergencies. Now here's where it gets really bad. Weeks to months, catastrophic. Phoenix relies entirely on external water piped in from the Colorado River and underground aquifers that are already stressed. No water infrastructure means no Phoenix, period. The city also has extreme heat, regularly over 110 degrees Fahrenheit in summer. Without air conditioning and water, Phoenix becomes uninhabitable in days, not weeks. Local food production? Essentially zero. Energy? Imported. What this means, if you're in Phoenix and the supply chain breaks, you have maybe a week before heat and water scarcity become life-threatening. Phoenix is a city that exists because of modern logistics. Remove that, and it's one of the worst places to be stranded. Fun fact, Phoenix is one of the only major US cities that would literally cease to exist without 20th century infrastructure. It's a modern miracle and a modern vulnerability. Worst number 4, Miami, Florida. Moving east now, Miami ranks poorly for different reasons than Phoenix. It's not about targeting, it's about geography and resilience. Target risk, moderate. Miami has a major cargo port, some military presence, and financial significance. It's not a top nuclear target, but it's not ignored either. Fallout risk, moderate. Miami could catch fallout from strikes on Gulf Coast targets or southeastern military installations, depending on wind patterns. Florida's flat terrain and coastal location don't help with dispersion. First 72 hours, poor. Miami has almost no basements. The water table is too high. Evacuation is a nightmare. Only a few highways out, all of which flood during hurricanes. Now imagine that congestion during a nuclear event. Hospitals exist, but they're overwhelmed during normal hurricane season. Add a nuclear crisis and it's chaos. Weeks to months very poor. Miami is below sea level in many areas. Saltwater intrusion into aquifers is already a problem. The city relies on a fragile freshwater system that would collapse quickly without power. Extreme heat and humidity make survival without AC dangerous. Local food production is minimal. Everything is imported. The population density and tourist economy mean resources disappear fast. What this means, Miami is built for a functioning supply chain and modern utilities. Without those, it's one of the most vulnerable cities in America. If you're there when things go bad, your priority is getting out, not sheltering in place. Worst number 3, San Diego, California. Heading back west, San Diego is a different story entirely. This one's about targeting, not resilience. Target risk, very high. San Diego is home to the largest naval base on the West Coast. Aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, Pacific Fleet Command, Marine Corps bases, major defense contractors, aerospace industry. If you're planning a strike on U.S. military power projection, San Diego is near the top of the list. Fallout risk high. A strike on San Diego means immediate fallout, and if targets up the coast in Los Angeles or the Bay Area are hit, prevailing ocean winds could push additional fallout south and east. San Diego also sits near several other high-value military sites within 100 miles. First 72 hours, mixed. Some homes have underground spaces, but not many. Hospitals are good. Evacuation routes are limited. Mountains to the east, ocean to the west, Mexico to the south, and congestion to the north. Water comes from the Colorado River via aqueduct, which is a single point of failure. Weeks to months. Poor. San Diego has a mild climate, which helps, but local food production is minimal. Energy is imported, water is imported. The city is densely populated and heavily dependent on external supply chains. If those break, San Diego struggles quickly. What this means. If you're in San Diego and tensions escalate, you're living near one of the most strategically valuable targets in the country. That's the trade-off for living in a beautiful coastal city with a massive military presence. The city itself can't sustain its population without external inputs. Now in just a moment, we're hitting the top 2 worst cities, and number 1 is going to surprise a lot of people. Worst number 2, Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is the political and symbolic heart of the United States. That makes it an obvious target. Target risk, extreme. The Pentagon, the White House, Capitol Hill, National Command Authority, intelligence agencies, strategic command infrastructure. If you're executing a decapitation strike, D.C. is target number 1. There's no ambiguity here. Fallout risk, very high. A strike on D.C. means immediate fallout across the entire metro area. Prevailing winds blow east, which means Maryland, Delaware, and parts of Pennsylvania get hit. The surrounding region also has multiple secondary targets. Fort Meade, NSA headquarters, Quantico, Norfolk Naval Base to the south. First 72 hours, mixed. DC actually has decent shelter options. The metro system provides underground spaces. Many government buildings have hardened basements. Hospitals are excellent. But evacuation is a disaster. The Beltway becomes gridlock during normal traffic. Add a nuclear event and nobody's getting out. Water comes from the Potomac, which could be contaminated depending on strike location. Weeks to months. Poor. DC has no local food production. Energy is imported. The city is entirely dependent on external logistics. The population is dense, educated, and resource-intensive. Without functioning supply chains, DC becomes unsustainable quickly. The surrounding region has some farmland, but not enough to support millions of people. What this means, if you're in DC when things go bad, your survival depends on whether you can shelter immediately and whether the government infrastructure holds. Long term, DC is not a place you want to be stranded. Worst number 1, Norfolk, Virginia. And here we are. This is the one that surprises people. Norfolk isn't as famous as New York or Los Angeles, but strategically it's one of the worst places to be. Target risk, extreme. Norfolk is home to the largest naval base in the world. Aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, amphibious assault ships, Naval Station Norfolk, shipyards, Atlantic Fleet Command, NATO Allied Command. If you're targeting US power projection and naval dominance, Norfolk is the bullseye. Fallout risk, very high. A strike on Norfolk means immediate fallout. The surrounding area, Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach, Richmond, all get hit. Prevailing winds blow northeast, which means fallout spreads inland and up the coast. The region is flat and low-lying, which doesn't help with dispersion. First 72 hours. Poor. Norfolk is low elevation, near sea level in many areas. Very few basements due to the water table. Evacuation is a nightmare. Limited highways, bridges, and tunnels create choke points. Hospitals exist but would be overwhelmed instantly. Water comes from reservoirs that could be contaminated. Weeks to months. Very poor. Norfolk has no local food production. Energy is imported. The city is densely populated and relies entirely on external supply chains. The climate is humid and hot in summer, which makes survival without AC dangerous. The region is economically tied to the military, which means if the base is gone, the economy collapses. What this means: Norfolk is a military city. It exists to project power. That makes it invaluable in peacetime and a liability in a nuclear scenario. If you're there when tensions escalate, your priority is getting inland and upwind as fast as possible. Alright, that's the worst 5. Now let's flip it. What are the best city types to be in after a nuclear attack? The 5 best cities. Best number 5, Boise, Idaho. Starting off our safer cities, Boise ranks here because it's geographically isolated, low priority, and surrounded by resources. Target risk, very low. Boise has no major military installations nearby, no strategic ports, no defense industry concentration. It's a state capital, but it's not a high-value political target. Targeting Boise doesn't make strategic sense. Fallout risk, low. Boise is somewhat isolated. Prevailing winds blow east from the Pacific, which means fallout from West Coast targets would have to travel hundreds of miles over mountains to reach Boise. The biggest risk would be strikes on nuclear sites in Washington State or Idaho National Laboratory, but those are far enough away that Boise would have time to react. First 72 hours. Good. Boise has a mix of homes with basements. Hospitals are decent for a smaller metro. Water comes from the Boise River and local aquifers, which are relatively secure. Evacuation isn't a major concern because the surrounding area is low density. You can leave the city and find shelter in rural areas quickly. Weeks to months, very good. And here's where Boise really shines. The city is surrounded by farmland. The Snake River Plain is one of the most productive agricultural regions in the country. Potatoes, wheat, dairy. The climate has cold winters, but it's survivable with basic preparation. Energy comes from a mix of hydro, natural gas, and some local generation. The population is low enough that resources don't deplete instantly. What this means: Boise isn't perfect, but it's one of the safer mid-sized cities in a nuclear scenario. You're far from major targets, you have local resources, and you're not fighting millions of people for food and water. Best number 4, Spokane, Washington. Moving north a bit, Spokane ranks higher because it has similar advantages to Boise, plus better energy and water resilience. Target risk, low. Spokane has Fairchild Air Force Base nearby, which gives it some military significance, but it's not a top-tier target compared to Seattle or coastal bases. The base is important for refueling and strategic bombers, so there's some risk, but it's not a primary strike location. Fallout risk, low to moderate. Spokane is inland and upwind from most West Coast targets. If Seattle or the Puget Sound gets hit, prevailing winds blow east, which means Spokane could catch fallout. But the Cascade Mountains provide some barrier, and Spokane has time to react and shelter. First 72 hours. Good. Spokane has a decent number of homes with basements. Water comes from the Spokane River and the Spokane Valley Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer, which is one of the largest and cleanest aquifers in the U.S. Hospitals are solid. Evacuation is easy, low density, multiple routes out to rural areas. Weeks to months. Excellent. Spokane is surrounded by farmland. Wheat, barley, lentils. The region also has timber, which means fuel and building materials. Energy comes largely from hydroelectric power from the Columbia River system, which is one of the most resilient energy sources in the country. The climate has cold winters, but it's manageable. Population density is low. What this means: Spokane is one of the best mid-sized cities for medium-term survival. Clean water, local energy, local food, and low population density mean you're not competing for resources. The only downside is potential fallout from Seattle, but you'd have time to shelter. Best number 3, Duluth, Minnesota. Heading east now to the Great Lakes, Duluth ranks high because of one massive advantage: Lake Superior. Target risk, very low. Duluth has a cargo port, but it's not a strategic military target. No major bases, no defense industry, no command centers. It's economically important for Great Lakes shipping, but that doesn't make it a nuclear target. Fallout risk, low. Duluth is geographically isolated. The nearest likely targets are the Twin Cities, which are 150 miles away. Prevailing winds generally blow from the west, so fallout from Midwest or Plains targets would miss Duluth. The biggest risk would be strikes on the upper Midwest, but even then, Duluth is far enough away to avoid the worst. First 72 hours. Good. Duluth has plenty of homes with basements due to the cold climate. Water comes from Lake Superior, the largest freshwater lake in the world by surface area. That's basically unlimited clean water. Hospitals are decent. Evacuation isn't a major concern because the surrounding area is sparsely populated. Weeks to months, excellent. Duluth is surrounded by forests, farmland, and freshwater. The region grows wheat, corn, dairy, and vegetables. Energy comes from a mix of sources, including some local hydro. The climate is harsh, winters are brutal, but that's actually an advantage because it filters out unprepared populations. Duluth also has a strong regional economy that doesn't rely on just-in-time logistics. What this means: Duluth is one of the best cities in America for medium-term survival. Clean water, local food, low population density, and geographic isolation make it a strong choice. The winter is rough, but if you can handle cold, Duluth is a fortress. Now in just a moment, we're revealing the top 2 best cities, and number 1 is going to make perfect sense once you see the logic. Best number 2, Burlington, Vermont. Up in the Northeast, Burlington ranks high because it's isolated, resource-rich, and far from major targets. Target risk, very low. Burlington has no strategic value, no military bases, no defense contractors, no major ports. It's a small college town. Nobody's targeting Burlington. Fallout risk, very low. Burlington is in the northeast corner of the US, far from most likely targets. Prevailing winds blow from the west, which means fallout from Midwest targets would miss Burlington entirely. The biggest risk would be strikes on Boston or New York, but both are far enough away that Burlington would avoid direct fallout. The Green Mountains provide additional geographic protection. First 72 hours. Excellent. Burlington has plenty of basements. Water comes from Lake Champlain, which is a massive freshwater source. Hospitals are small but functional. Evacuation isn't necessary because the surrounding area is rural and low density. You can shelter in place or move into the countryside easily. Weeks to months, excellent. Burlington is surrounded by farmland, dairy, vegetables, maple syrup, orchards. The region is one of the most food secure in the country. Energy comes from a mix of hydro, solar, and some imports, but Vermont has been investing in local energy resilience. The climate is cold but manageable with preparation. Population density is extremely low. What this means: Burlington is one of the safest places in America in a nuclear scenario. Low target risk, low fallout risk, abundant water and food, and a population that's already somewhat prepared for off-grid living. If you're in Burlington when things go bad, you're in one of the best positions in the country. Best number 1, Fargo, North Dakota. And here it is. This is the number 1 safest city type in a nuclear scenario, and here's why. Target risk, extremely low. Fargo has zero strategic value. No military bases, no defense industry, no major infrastructure that would justify a strike. It's a regional agricultural hub. There's no reason to target Fargo. Fallout risk, extremely low. Fargo is in the center of the Great Plains, hundreds of miles from the nearest likely targets. Prevailing winds blow from the west, which means fallout from West Coast strikes wouldn't reach Fargo. The nearest potential target is Minot Air Force Base, which is 200 plus miles north. Even if that were struck, Fargo would have time to react. First 72 hours. Excellent. Fargo has plenty of homes with basements due to tornado risk and cold winters. Water comes from the Red River and local aquifers. Hospitals are solid for a smaller metro. Evacuation isn't needed because the surrounding area is rural and low density. You can shelter in place comfortably. Weeks to months. Exceptional. And here's what really sets Fargo apart. The city is surrounded by some of the most productive farmland on Earth. Wheat, corn, soybeans, sugar beets, livestock. The region produces far more food than it consumes. Energy comes from local sources: coal, natural gas, wind. The population density is extremely low. The climate is harsh, winters are brutal. But Fargo is already built for that. The community is resilient, self-sufficient, and used to isolation. What this means: Fargo is the safest city in America in a nuclear scenario. It's far from targets, far from fallout, surrounded by food, has clean water, and a population that's already prepared for harsh conditions. If you're in Fargo when things go bad, you're in the best possible position. Okay, so what do you do with this information? Here's a simple checklist you can use to evaluate your own city. First, am I near major military bases, ports, or defense contractors? If yes, you're at higher target risk. Second, am I downwind from likely targets? Check prevailing wind patterns. If you're east of major targets, you're at higher fallout risk. Third, does my city have basements or underground spaces? If no, your shelter options are limited. Fourth, where does my water come from? If it's a single pipeline or aqueduct, that's a vulnerability. Fifth, is there farmland within 150 miles? If no, your city can't feed itself long term. And finally, can I survive without AC or heat? If your climate is extreme, losing utilities is life-threatening. This isn't about fear, it's about understanding how systems work. Most people will never face a nuclear scenario. But if you do, knowing these factors gives you an edge. This video helped you think differently about where you live. Hit that like button and subscribe. We break down systems so you can make smarter decisions. Thanks for watching.